Hello, my name is Matthew Hunter with Legacy Wilderness Academy, and I'm on a mission to document every edible and medicinal plant in the southeastern U.S. so Southerners can have greater access to nutritious food and free medicine. And today we're going to be going on a plant walk, and I'll be showing you some of the most common edible and medicinal plants that you can find in midwinter and early spring in the southern U.S. But many of the plants we'll be looking at actually grow widespread throughout the whole eastern U.S. as well as throughout most of Western Europe. So stay tuned and we're going to have a good time. Before we begin, I'll quickly mention that if you want to learn more about medicinal plants of the southeastern U.S., make sure that after this video you download my free guide to medicinal plants, which you can find in the link in the description below this video. Most of the plants we're going to be looking at today, most people would write off as just common weeds. And so here's where we're going to be filming today. To the untrained eye, it looks like an empty patch of grass with really nothing there, but for those who are willing to stop and take a look, we're going to be uncovering some of the hidden treasures that you can find underfoot the wonderful edible and medicinal plants of the eastern U.S. So let's jump into it. The first plant we're going to look at is called chickweed or Stellaria media. And as with most of the plants we'll be looking at today, depending on where you're at, you may be able to find it from the late fall all the way through to the early spring. So in higher elevation areas where you're under snow in the wintertime, you may see this in the late fall or early spring, but here in the deep south, it's early January right now, and it is in its perfect stage for harvesting. So chickweed is a wonderful edible and medicinal plant. And before we talk about its uses, let me show you a couple tips for identification. The first thing you'll notice about chickweed is its growth habit. It sprawls along the ground and usually forms thick mats. And when you look closely, the leaves are almost succulent, not quite succulent, but they're really full of moisture, and they're oppositely arranged on the stem. So if we take a stem, we can see that they come out at the same place along the stem. And one of the most unique identification features is if you look really closely, you can see that there is a line of hairs coming down the stem. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that. And so the whole plant is not hairy, but it has one line of hairs, it's very distinct, going along the stem. Another feature you're going to notice with chickweed is that if you gently break the plant and pull it apart, if you're careful, you'll notice that there is a elastic cord in the middle. You can see me stretching it there. So the elastic cord forms another good identification feature. The last way that you can identify chickweed is by its flowers. It has tiny little white flowers that look like they have 10 petals, but if you look really close, you'll see that each flower actually has 5 petals, and if you look at the base, each petal is split into 2, giving it the appearance that there's 2 petals when there's in reality just 1. So there's 5 petals that look like 10 petals. And so probably the number one way you're going to be using chickweed is as an edible green. In the stage that we found it today, it is absolutely perfect for harvesting, and it tastes really good. It does get a little thin and wiry with age, so as it ages it won't be as good. It'll have sort of a tough nature to it, but it's high in vitamins, it's high in nutrients, a wonderful edible green that I think everyone should know. So right now it's near the first of the year, it's January. It's a perfect time for New Year's resolutions, and this is a plant that can actually help with weight loss. So chickweed is a mild appetite suppressant. It's not just going to help you shed off the pounds if you're not trying, but if you're already set in your mind that you want to eat less, this is a plant that if you drink a cup of the tea about 30 minutes to an hour before you eat, it can help you feel fuller and help you say no to eating more food, to maybe going back for seconds, right? This is a wonderful plant for that. It's also used medicinally in skin salves. This is a plant that is considered an emollient, so it has sort of a mucilaginous texture to it. It's an anti-inflammatory for the skin, so it's really, really good for itchy skin. You can add it to just about any skin salve, and it's going to be a wonderful addition to any type of skin preparation. The next plant we'll look at is the purple dead nettle, which you can see here. It's the one with the little pink flowers. The purple dead nettle is a really, really common weed that's originally from Europe and has now spread its way across almost all of the United States. It's actually in the mint family, but it's one of those mints that doesn't have a minty smell. One of the ways you can identify it is by its square stems. If you roll it in between your fingers, you'll notice it's distinctly square. It also has opposite leaves like we looked at with the chickweed, and the leaves are fuzzy and heart-shaped. And I'll show you a little close-up of what the flowers look like on the screen, but that's the purple dead nettle, a really easy plant to identify. And actually the top part of the leaves, it's not on these ones because they're still young, but as it ages, they will start to have a purplish color as well on the uppermost leaves. They'll be almost completely purple. So the purple dead nettle, like I said, is in the mint family. It's scientifically known as Lamium purpureum, and it's not related to true nettles. And a lot of people wonder where it got its weird name from. Well, the European species that was used a lot more historically is known as Lamium album, or the white dead nettle, and the leaves of that species look a lot like our common stinging nettle. So that's where it got the name from. But unlike the true stinging nettle, which has the stinging hairs, the dead nettles don't have stinging hairs. That's why they're referred to as being dead. So the purple dead nettle, that's where it got its fun name. And this plant is edible and medicinal. It's probably known more for its medicinal uses than its edible uses, but people do eat it. It has sort of a hairy texture, and the smell can be, some people will describe it sometimes as sort of musky, or I think of it as kind of resinous. It's not unpleasant in my opinion, but some people don't really like it. So they'll usually try to mask the texture and the flavor in things like smoothies, in pesto is a common one. I'll see soups and things like that. So people will consume this mostly for its nutritional benefits. And so this is a plant that's considered a nutritive herb. It's high in vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, so it's a wonderful plant for that purpose. There's somewhat of a newer, as far as I can tell, a newer medicinal use that has been sort of discovered in relatively recent times, and that is as an antihistamine for allergies. So this is a plant that, because it's high in antioxidants, it's thought that that's really the main reason that it acts in this way, but it's really great for people who suffer with allergies and people who drink this plant maybe a few times a day during allergy season will oftentimes report having a good success with it for that purpose. So that's the purple dead nettle, a wonderful antihistamine for allergy season and a nutritive herb to help you get all the nutrients and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that your body needs. The next plant we'll look at is one of my very favorite early spring salad greens. It's called the corn salad, scientifically known as Valerianella radiata in the southeastern US. And then its European cousin that looks almost identical is known as Valerianella locusta. So this is a plant that's really easy to identify. You can see it has a texture and a color that really reminds you of a lettuce, and the texture is like a really smooth butter lettuce. So absolutely wonderful plant. One of the ways you can identify it is by the edge of the leaf. It has what's known as ciliate margins. So you have to look really close to see this, but if you look at the very edge of the leaf, there's this little line of hairs that only shows up on the edge, whereas the whole rest of the leaf, the whole body of the leaf, is hairless. So that's how you can identify it. You'll also notice that it has a really symmetrical appearance. You can see that it's very much a symmetrical plant when you look at it, and also the leaves are somewhat club shaped, so they are sort of have a narrow stalk on the leaf, and then it broadens out and gets wider as you go near the top. And so I actually have a full video on this plant and its edible uses, and so you can see that, and I also have an article on this plant, and you can see both of those linked in the description below this video. The next plant we'll look at here is a wonderful medicinal that everyone should know, really common in the winter months and the early spring. It's called cleavers. Cleavers are one of the easiest plants to identify. They have square stems. They're not in the mint family like the purple dead nettle, but they do have square stems. So if you roll the stems in between your fingers, you can feel that distinct square, rigid feel. Then they have what we call whorled leaves. And so whorled means that if you look at where the leaves come out of the stem, they come out in sort of like clusters. So there will be usually about, depending on the species, anywhere from 4 to 8, but on this particular species, about 6 leaves per whorl. And so that's a great way to identify the plant. And then lastly, the whole plant is covered in hairs that are kind of, give it like a rough texture, and it makes it to where they will stick to clothing, hence the name cleavers. I should also mention that once cleaver matures, you'll see tiny white flowers with 4 petals, followed by fruit that show up in pairs, and they are sort of hairy little spheres that show up in pairs. And so that is how to identify the cleaver. So cleaver is another one of those wonderful edible and medicinal plants. It's not really eaten too much, although because of the hairs. It's because those rough hairs give it the rough texture. But some species are less rough than others. And when you get it when it's really young, like the one we have here, the texture is actually not too bad. So you can definitely eat this plant. However, it is much more well known for its medicinal use. And cleaver, when I think of cleavers, I think of 2 things. One, a plant that is a lymphatic decongestant or a lymph mover, and a plant that is a diuretic. So as a lymph mover, this is going to be a wonderful plant to add into preparations, lymph preparations, for example, when you are dealing with an acute viral or bacterial infection. Anytime you have, cold or flu or something like that, the way I've been taught to treat those types of illnesses with herbs is to have your sort of antibacterial, antiviral mix, or, whatever, immune system stimulant sort of plants where you're just taking regularly, maybe at 2-hour intervals if it's really bad. And then on the side, you also have a second preparation where you have your lymph movers. And your lymph movers, you maybe take 1 dose or 2 doses a day, and that's going to help basically help your body rid itself of some of those toxins or metabolic waste while you are dealing with a cold or flu. As a lymph mover, it's also really good for skin issues. One of the specifics for this plant is for eczema, psoriasis, and acne. So chronic skin eruptions or skin issues have been treated with this plant. We're actually going to look at another plant here in a moment that's also good for those chronic skin issues. So a really good plant for those purposes. So then as a diuretic, this plant is good at sort of cleansing. It is considered cooling and anti-inflammatory to the urinary tract. So it's been used for any type of urinary tract inflammation, whether that be things like cystitis or bladder inflammation. It's used in conjunction with other herbs for things like urinary tract infections or anytime there's inflammation in the urinary tract. And lastly, one of the uses that you're probably not going to hear for cleavers is, again, one of those plants for helping someone to lose weight. Now, of course, when it comes to losing weight, we all know there's only one real way to lose weight, and that's to eat less calories than your body is using. So the real way to lose weight, of course, is to track your calories, weigh your food, and make sure that you're putting your body on a calorie deficit. But that being said, plants like cleavers and chickweed that we already looked at can help give the body just a little nudge in the right direction. And one of the very first times in recorded history that this plant was reported to be used for weight loss was actually in the 1st and 2nd century, around there, by the Greek philosopher Galen. And since then, it's been used throughout the millennia for that purpose. So the Appalachian herbalist Tommy Bass considered that like the main use for the plant that he knew was to help people to lose weight. And in 1597, John Gerard in his Herbal wrote that women do usually make a pottage of cleavers with a little mutton and oatmeal to cause lankness and keep them from fatness. So that was John Gerard's Herbal in 1597, a record there of women eating the cleavers to watch their weight. So I think it's funny that even in the late 1500s, women were still concerned about their weight. And so that's the cleavers, a wonderful lymphatic, decongestant, diuretic, urinary tract, anti-inflammatory, and maybe an herb to help with weight. Another wonderful edible and medicinal plant that you can find in the late fall, winter, and early spring is the yellow dock or curly dock. And this is a plant that you can use the root medicinally. I'm going to show you how to dig up the root and why it's called yellow dock by that color of the root. And then you can also eat the leaves, which right now are probably not in the prime stage, but once it starts to warm up a little bit, they're going to start sprouting. So let me show you really quickly how to identify this plant. The best time to really identify it is when it goes to seed, but right now there's still a couple important ID cues that we can look at. So let me go ahead and show you those. So again, the 2 most common names for this plant are the curly dock and the yellow dock. And that first name, curly dock, is a reference to the edges of the leaves, which you can see here have a distinct sort of curly look to them. When we're looking at the leaves, if we look at the base of the leaves in here, especially on some of these younger leaves, I'm going to show you there's like a little sheath that wraps around them. Let me show you that real quick. All right, so here we have this little sheath. You can see it's almost like a little paper. And as the plant grows, you will still see this, but it'll be dry and shriveled up, and it'll actually turn brown. So be on the lookout for that as well. But you can see on the young leaves, if you remove this sheath, you can peel that off, and then underneath, I don't know if you can see that, maybe not, but you can definitely feel it. There is a slimy substance. So there's like a mucousy, slimy substance under the sheath. And those little sheaths are common on plants in the buckwheat family. And so this is actually in the buckwheat family, a relative of buckwheat. It's also very closely related to rhubarb. And so the leaves are best when they're really small and young. They can be a little bit bitter as they start to, actually pretty bitter as they start to age. They're you can eat them raw when they're really young, but as they age, you can cook them and they make a wonderful soup vegetable. But in this video, I want to focus more on the medicinal uses. So let's go ahead and dig up one of the roots. So for yellow dock, I like to find one of the biggest plants in the area, like this one. And a lot of people will just try to go right after the root, right off the bat. But what I like to do is I like to dig a hole right next to the side of it. So that's what I'm going to do here. And being in the southeastern U.S., it's really a wonderful place to dig up root vegetables. When I lived in the Southwest, the ground was always rocky and hard, and it was almost impossible to get any type of roots. But, you know, the Southeast is a really sandy, soft soil. So I love living here and being able to dig up these wild medicines a lot easier. And also notice when I'm digging this up, I'm not just tossing the dirt everywhere. I want to try to leave it like I found it. So I'm trying to keep the dirt in a little pile off to the side. And now that we have this little hole dug, I'm going to go ahead and put the shovel right here. And I'm going to pop the root right out. And doing it that way ensures that the root doesn't break. So, well, get a little bit deeper there. There we go. That is a beautiful yellow dock root. Okay, so I've split it open here and you can clearly see why it's called yellow dock. The inside of the root has a real bright yellow color. So now I'm going to go ahead and fill in that hole, make sure no one can trip on it, and make sure that, you know, it kind of looks like I was really never here. And then we'll talk about its medicinal uses. So again, dock is one of those plants that's widespread, not only throughout the eastern United States, but also throughout all of Western Europe. In fact, it's originally from Europe, and it's now found growing like a weed, widespread throughout the eastern U.S. It's very easy to find this plant. It likes to grow usually in moist soils. A lot of times you'll find it in places where you can't really harvest it, growing in ditches and just sort of abandoned waste areas next to parking lots and places you usually wouldn't really want to harvest it. It grows all over my town. But dock is a wonderful medicine for the liver and for digestion. It's what's known as a digestive bitter. So whenever you taste something that's bitter, and even if you don't taste it, but especially when you do taste it, it sends signals to your brain to start producing those digestive fluids and enzymes that help break down food and help you to get the nutrients out of the food and absorb those nutrients better. So it's really wonderful for that purpose. And there's two main things I think of when I think of dock. The first is iron deficiency and anemia. And the second, like the cleavers we talked about, is chronic skin conditions like psoriasis, eczema, and acne. So those are two of the main specific areas of action that this plant is going to be really good for. People used to think it was really high in iron, but come to find out it has just about as much iron as other vegetables that are high in iron. So the leaves and the root are high in iron, but it's not just that it's high in iron, it helps the body somehow either absorb the iron or assimilate the iron that's stored in the liver. One way or another, this plant is very effective at increasing iron levels. And so a lot of people know that if you take iron supplements, one of the main side effects for iron supplements is really bad constipation. This is a plant that is not going to give you that horrible constipation. That actually can be extreme in some cases when you're taking iron supplements. And other people may have taken iron supplements and found out that no matter how much they take, their iron levels just don't seem to go up. Well, this is one of those plants that can really help in those cases, and it's basically a natural iron supplement. There's no other herb that I'm aware of that increases your iron level so effectively as dock root. So it's a wonderful plant. And the way I prepare this plant is as a decoction, which means I boil the root for about 15 minutes. And I use a 1:32 ratio, which is 1 ounce of the dried herb to 32 ounces or 1 quart of water. So pretty easy to remember. You're going to take an ounce of the dried root, boil it in 1 quart of water for about 15 minutes. Then I'll store that in the fridge, and before meals, I'll take about 2 swigs of it before every meal, and that helps stimulate digestion. And it also helps make sure that all the nutrients that are in your food are actually getting digested and absorbed a lot better. So it's a wonderful plant for that purpose. And then for chronic skin conditions, things like psoriasis, eczema, and acne are really difficult to nail down the root cause, especially psoriasis. There's different theories as to the exact root cause. Some people say leaky gut, some people say stress. There's different ideas depending on your sort of frame of mind and how you approach dealing with those types of illnesses. But eczema is the same way. It can be hard to figure out what is actually making your body respond negatively to allergens or whatever it is causing the eczema. And acne is the same way. It's like hormonal changes. It's hard to really nail down what the root issue is. So they can be difficult illnesses to treat, but for whatever reason, dock root seems to be really good at handling those types of chronic skin conditions. With eczema, it's especially useful if the eczema is really weepy and wet and it's just it's draining. The dock can help really dry that out and help reduce those issues. And sometimes with those really chronic skin issues, it can take a long time to see results. So it's not one you want to take for like a week and then give up. It's one you want to take for a few months, and you should start seeing changes. So that is the dock root, a wonderful edible and medicinal plant. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video and are going to get out and start finding some more edible and medicinal plants in the wintertime and the early spring. Again, my name is Matthew Hunter with Legacy Wilderness Academy. And if you want to learn more about medicinal plants of the Southeast, make sure to download my free guide to medicinal plants, which you can find in the description below this video. And also make sure to check out some of my other videos. I want to be at it this year, just documenting more and more plants, and a lot of these plants, I hope to actually have full-length videos on each one showing you how to prepare it and going more in depth on its medicinal uses and showing you exactly how to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and put up some of my other videos popping up around the screen. Make sure to check out some of those. I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy foraging.